we keep our mixing needles in the fridge for reuse. Some people only use them once. It's totally up to you. As long as you treat them correctly, you're okay to use them a couple times. So we're doing a couple different things right here. We'll do our Enforce 3. This is a Nasalgen shot, and this one's the Bovishield Gold. So we're gonna mix these separately. Obviously, if you're keeping things, make sure you have the same one. Otherwise, you ruin a whole lot of everything, and it's not gonna work out very well. We always do wet then dry. You are putting the liquid on the dry matter, okay? So these fancy little things are actually really nice. So you're gonna push this down in the wet, twist it a little bit. You can kind of feel it when it pops through. You don't want to turn this upside down because it's gonna start draining, and you want to keep, this is vacuum sealed. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna let this suck this into it. So I'm gonna tip it just enough to get that in there so that it's not gonna leak. And then I'm gonna turn it over and twist. See how that's going through? That's what we want it to do. So if you accidentally do the wrong one first, it's not that big of a deal. You just lose your vacuum. So then you need to take a gun and take the wet out and put it in the dry manually instead of letting it do this by itself. You can, I'm not gonna do it right now. Maybe it is taking forever. You can take a knife or a needle and poke it in the top of this just to give it some more airflow so that it's easier to suck it out. You can also give this a little squeeze, there we go. And you can hear when it went down. You don't want to shake your drugs, but you can definitely swirl them in order to get that to mix up a little bit. And just kind of tip it so you can still see some dry matter there. So we're just gonna swirl it a little bit more and let it mix up. You can damage the cell structure in this. So this is a killed vaccine, right? So you're rehydrating it. And if you shake it, you can damage that cell structure and your vaccine's not gonna have the efficacy that it would have without. Okay, we got that one mixed up. We're gonna set that in there for now. We'll do this other one. So I'm taking my needle, making sure it's the correct one. Which one am I putting it on first? Good job. So just twisting that makes it a little easier for it to go through. Like I said, we're gonna put this on top. We don't wanna press hard because we don't wanna break that seal, but we also don't want it to leak when we flip it over. So press a little bit, flip and twist, and that'll go down and do just exactly as it should. Some of these I'll just hold on to. It should hold itself, but if it pops off, it's more work for me, so I'm gonna hold on to it and make sure it doesn't. And again, we're not gonna shake, we'll just give that a little bit of a swirl. Sometimes you can move that bottle around on the top and get it to mix a little bit better as it's going in there. That one mixed up really nice, just all by itself. All right, so there's that. I'm gonna go put these back in the fridge where they belong, and we'll load guns and do the rest of it. I'll be right back. This gun is super handy. I really like it. We don't use it with the glass bottles just because it'd be easier to break them and you're actually using this in the chute with the cows. But if you're using it with these plastic bottles and these drugs are not mixing, they work out really well. So you just squeeze it in there and it locks on the end there. Tip it up to squeeze the air out. Let it fill. I wonder if I grabbed the broken one. I might have. Okay, usually they're really handy. So on all guns, that one and these ones included, at the end of every time you use it, wash it immediately. You don't want to let that stuff dry in here. If you get drugs mixed in here, you just ruin the efficacy of your drugs and wasted a lot of money and a lot of heartache for nothing. The other thing that we'll do is, it's already done, but see this O-ring in here? They have oil that you can put on there and you just squeeze a little bit on there and that will make these slide really nicely, which is something you want. Now you can see that there was excess oil in there. So every time before I use this at the beginning of the day, I'm gonna try to get most of that out. It's not gonna hurt anything being in there. It just means there's less drugs in there. So I would like that to not happen. When you're filling, we always use the Nasalgen on the red. So I'm gonna set this one, that one's gonna go on the other side. So we have our Nasalgen. That's just for us to know which one's which when you're refilling. I'm gonna use the needles that Tammy doesn't like to fill this one. Maybe she got rid of them. Since we're not actually using the needle on the cow with this Nasalgen, we're gonna use a nose cannula. Red. So when have you guys done this before? Okay, so these twist on and then you can pull that off. When you're working with these big bottles, it's not as big of a deal, but especially with the smaller bottles, you don't want to push air into them until you've pulled some of out. You can explode them. Not great. So I usually start with my plunger about halfway down, and we're going to put this on. My hands are not working today. And see how it sucked that out immediately because it still had vacuum in there? Not a big deal. So we're gonna pull, push, pull, push, pull, push. And you can see when I pull in, most of my air is rising to the top right now. When you are working with this, with the nose cannula and the one you're not using, it's not that big of a deal to have a little bit of air in the top of that. When you're working on one where you're actually gonna shoot it into the cow with the needle, you do not want any airspace in here. It will bubble the medicine back out after you give it if you're doing that. So on this one, we keep this separately, and we are going to use these nose cannules, and we'll show you how to do that when we have a cow in here. But we're gonna set that there. Now, you see my button is out, so we're set. These ones are all gonna be, and read on the bottle every time you do it, but these ones are all gonna be set on to. That's where it needs to be. I checked that. That one's good to go.
What does the number mean?
How many milliliters, how many cc's you're giving. And some of them will differ, so definitely check your medicine before, just to make sure you're the right one. We're gonna use a 5/8 needle for this one. We'll get that screwed on there. Again, press that button in. That will let this go up and down. I should have done this before the needle, but we're gonna do it this way anyhow. Get as much of that out as possible. There we go. Start about halfway. Let that in there. This one's not, yep, sucking it up a little bit. That's fine. Pull, push, pull, push, pull, push. And especially when you're not at the end of the bottle, you're gonna click this because that vacuum's sucking that back up there. As soon as you press this just a little bit, it'll click that button back out and lock it so it's not sucking any in. And on this one, we wanna make sure that there's no bubbles in the top. We'll tap that a little bit. It looks pretty good. Before we give our first shot, we're gonna turn it upright, tap it, make sure they're all out, and then just squeeze gently if you need to get the air out of there. All right, I'm gonna put this back on for now so nobody stabs themselves, and we'll get the rest of this set up and get started, I think, on the bulls. So instead of using the fun one, we're gonna use the old one. This one's not a mixed, so it's okay to go back in the fridge for a certain period of time and be used again the next time. Because we do that on this one, see there's a lot of bubbles in the top of this one. That's fine, but I would prefer it didn't do that. So we'll push those back up in there, give it a click. I just pressed that once. And this one's gonna have some more bubbles. So we'll give it a second to let those rise. And you just wanna gently click this. You're gonna lose a little bit until it clicks again. You're gonna lose a little bit every time, but at least you don't have a bubble in there. Not a problem.